Because we did an apology video where we explained how we were lying to you guys about us going to Casa Maria's, not going to Casa Maria's, but saying we were going to Casa Maria's, and then saying that we've never been to Casa Maria's before, and they were all bold-faced lies. We decided that Casa Maria's is owed an actual review. And so today, that's what we're going to give it. Not the typical intro for a Microwave Mouths episode, but albeit necessary for this one. So welcome to the video. This is Microwave Mouths actually reviewing for the first time ever Casa Maria's.
Quickly, I want to talk about the general ambiance of the restaurant. It's a nice little restaurant in the small town of Shoto. It actually wasn't very busy when we got there. The seats were very comfortable. I know typically whenever I go to the restaurants, there's a lot of them that I go to where it feels like the seats are either too squishy, too low hanging, or maybe too far away from the table itself. But at Casa Maria, in the booth we sat in, I felt very comfortable. I felt like it was a great distance from the chair. It led to a very comfortable sitting experience, which I think is really important, especially when you take into account that most of the time you're pretty much always seated at a restaurant. Another thing I want to talk about briefly is the ambiance. It was not too loud. It was fairly quiet. It was clean. The wait staff was very nice. They were very attentive to our drink refills. They did a great work. I really appreciate what they do there. I don't know what the rest of my cohort is thinking, but overall, I would rate the general experience and customer service a solid 10 out of 10. I would definitely go there again, and I would definitely recommend it to anyone that's passing by to stop and try out Casa Maria's and their Mexican food.
So unfortunately, due to where I sat in the booth, we all made a decision not to get shots of me because there were patrons behind me that would always be in the shot. So we just figured it'd be best to not film me. So I was basically the cameraman in this, but I did also have dinner. So I am going to take this time to rate it.
So to start off, I got a horchata as my drink. You could tell there was a powdered mix, but overall the flavor was still solid. It just was not as sweet as it typically is the past times I went. So with that being said, I will have to rate the horchata pretty low. I would have rated probably a 4 out of 10. But after that, I did switch and got a Dr. Pepper, which, it was a solid Dr. Pepper. It was average. So I have to give it a good 10 out of 10.
For my beverage, I got myself a sweet tea. The thing about the tea, it was not too strong, not too sweet. I wished it was a little bit more of both, but I really can't complain. So a good 6 out of 10 on that one. Not a bad tea, just not the greatest.
I did order a Dr. Pepper for my drink. Dr. Pepper is one of my favorite sodas. Let me rephrase that. It is my favorite soda. So, I do judge sodas on certain things. How carbonated is it? How much does it taste like the drink it's supposed to be? And then just general, looks of it. And I will say, as far as the drink goes, it looked perfect. It looked amazing. It was cold. It was refreshing. The syrup was there. You definitely knew it was Dr. Pepper. So as far as beverages go, to my knowledge, they're pretty amazing. I've never had a bad drink from there. I would give it 10 out of 10 for Dr. Pepper, but that just could be my biased opinion. When you get there, they automatically give you complimentary chips and salsa. But overall, talking about the salsa in general, if you saw, it's a red salsa. It's pretty typical salsa for most restaurants. As far as my personal opinions on it, I like my salsas a little bit thicker. So the salsa they have there is a little more watery, so it's not necessarily to my taste. Additionally, I like my stuff to be pretty spicy. This salsa, however, is not spicy at all, at least not to me. That being said, though, I know they're trying to make it so that it's available to everyone, so everyone likes it. So if it's just a regular sauce that anyone can eat, I would say it works pretty well. Matter of fact, I would even say it's a pretty delicious salsa. If you take into account that it's made for everyone in mind. But for my personal opinion, when it comes to the salsa, I would give it a generous 7 out of 10. Generous kind of sounds a little rude, but in general, like I said, it's a little watery to my taste, and it's not quite that spicy. Maybe if they added like an option where you could order like a spicy version of salsa, I'd enjoy it a little bit more. But for right now, that's all I can say on that matter.
When it came to the salsa, I thought it was not too spicy, but very good flavor. Really, not much I can say about salsa. Not really a salsa guy, but um, I can recognize decent salsa when I taste it, so I give it about a good 6 out of 10.
With the salsa, it was kind of watered down. I mean, it's not a good spice level. It just could have used some more tomato base and some thickness to it. So with that said, I will have to rate the salsa a 5 out of 10.
I would want to talk about the chips and the queso itself. As far as the chips go, they came out hot and ready. You could tell that they'd been recently fried, or at the very least, they were warmed up fairly recently, which I really appreciated. They didn't taste stale, they were pretty amazing shape. As far as the queso goes, the queso was good texture, good taste. It was definitely a good queso. Once again, when it comes down to personal preferences, I like my queso a little thicker. I think this queso was a little bit runny for my usual preferences, but overall, I think it was really good. You really can't go wrong with the queso. It didn't have like a spicy kick to it. Again, though, that is a personal preference. So in general, I would give this queso like an 8 out of 10. Um, Definitely enjoyable for your average Joe, and I think anyone in the family would be able to eat this and say, that's pretty good queso.
The queso, bold flavor, rich flavor. It was very thin, very runny, except for that film that goes across the top. But that's like my favorite thing ever is to break the film and like just dip the chip into the cheese and just go like and eat it, dude. It was so good. Definitely one of my favorite quesos. Give it a 100% like a 8 out of 10. A solid 8 out of 10.
We also got a carne asada fries, which was to me was the best part about the appetizers. You had a good amount of steak to fry to queso ratio. With the steak, it had a good season on it, and the tenderness was exquisite. The fries were your average fries, so you can't complain too much there. So with the carne asada fries, I would have to rate them a 9 out of 10.
The carne asada fries. The word perfection comes to mind on this one. They were insanely good. The cheese was beautiful. The steak was wonderfully seasoned to perfection. Really can't get much better than this. It gets a good 9. It's a 9 out of 10. That was a good appetizer.
I ordered for the table some queso fries, which all it really was were fries. I think these were wavy fries with pieces of steak cut up and then queso cheese on top. As far as the queso goes, like I said, it was a little runny, but I think in this situation, the runny queso was the best choice because it was able to fully coat the food in a way that everyone could get a little bit of cheese for all their bites. As far as meat goes, the steak meat itself was delicious. It was seasoned. It was grilled pretty well. It wasn't chewy in any way. It was soft. It was pretty good. I would definitely give the meat on the steak fries a 10 out of 10. As far as the fries themselves, the fries are good. They're hot. They were nice, freshly cooked. I don't think they make them in-house because I don't think many places make fries in-house. But overall, I'd say it was good. My only peeve, and this could just be a personal thing, is that it was not as salty as I would have preferred it to be. But then again, I am a big fan of salting, so I like salting things in general. And so I don't necessarily count that against them. They probably leave it semi-saltless or lightly salted so that you can add the taste. For those reasons, though, I would say that the steak fries were a good 9 out of 10. I would probably put it a 10 out of 10 if it added more things, such as maybe like cheese, like not cheese, but like tomatoes and stuff. I would prefer it if it was a little more loaded. And for those reasons, I'm only going to give it a 9 out of 10 as far as meals go.
For the main course, I got a pollo con queso. It was, really good. It was really good. The chicken was seasoned well. The rice and beans had good flavor. And the core tortillas were just like the cherry on top. I got to make some pretty good little wraps out of it. and I love doing that. And I usually do flour, but I did corn this time, and it wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all. For my main dish, I gotta say, overall 8 out of 10.
For my main dish, I got street tacos. It came with 4 different tacos, so I got one in each different type of meat. I got steak, chicken, chorizo, and pork. The steak taco was pretty good. The steak was the same season and tenderness that came on the carne asada fries. So with that being said, I rate that one a solid 6 out of 10. The chicken I liked a bit better. It had a bit more flavor to the chicken, and the chicken was also more tender. So with that being said, I would give the chicken a 7 out of 10. The pork was, I'll say, about the same as the steak. It just didn't really have that much flavor to it. So with the pork, I would have to give it a 6 out of 10. But out of all 4 different tacos, my favorite would have to have been the chorizo. It had a good amount of chorizo. The didn't taste mushy. It was a good consistency. And it had all the spice you want. So with the chorizo, I would have given that one a 10 out of 10. With my sides, I got your Mexican rice and also your refried beans. The rice was pretty average. I'd have to give it a 5 out of 10. It came with a good amount of rice. My main just issue with it was there wasn't that much spice to it. And with the beans, those are a bit better. I wish they came with a bit more cheese on it. But they were still solid for beans. And I don't really like beans, so with that being said, I'll give it a good 6 out of 10.
What I decided to order was steak degollado. That includes ribeye steak topped with shrimp, bacon, and cheese sauce, then served with rice, beans, and 2 flour tortillas. I subbed flour tortillas for corn tortillas. I just think they're better in general. I am a corn tortilla stan. Moving back onto the food. Off rip, you can see that the shrimp and the bacon is on top of the steak. The steak has been drizzled in that, like I said, super runny cheese. Once again, I don't necessarily think that runny cheese is a bad option, but in this situation, I feel like the cheese ran off the steak and just kind of circled the sides. As far as the sides of rice and bean go, they tasted pretty good. Once again, they were kind of bland, but that's done on purpose because they don't want to over season it, because they want everyone to be able to salt to taste. As far as the beans are, though, the beans were good. Nice consistency, not too runny, not too thick. There weren't any chunks in it, so I really appreciated that. The rice itself also was pretty good. Once again, I prefer my rice a little more seasoned. That being said, though, as I mentioned, they probably let you season it yourself. I usually eat this stuff all mixed in together, so that's what I did a little bit after the fact. I don't think it was recorded, but I mixed it up and I added a little bit of the salsa, the complimentary salsa they gave us, as well as a little bit of salt and pepper, just to kind of make it a little more to my liking. The steak itself was delicious. The shrimp was delicious. The shrimp itself, like I said, was cooked. It was seasoned. It was nice and hot. The bacon itself was also seasoned well. Mostly just bacon fat, but it's still good. Bacon's bacon. You can't really go wrong with that. As far as the steak goes, the steak was delicious. Once again, not super chewy or anything like that. Pretty melt in your mouthy. I've never had a bad steak from there, and I really enjoyed it. When I decided to eat them, aka my main course, I kind of ate them in tacos. Usually what that entails is me putting rice, beans, meat, and then some of the queso that we ordered on top of it. That's just my preference of eating, and I had more than enough tortillas to do that. The meal itself was, like I said, very delicious. It was warm, it was hot. Don't expect cold food from there. And me personally, my meal, I would give it a solid 9.5 out of 10. Once again, my only real issue with it being that it didn't come already with lettuce, tomatoes, onions, that kind of stuff. But once again, that's something you could easily remedy by ordering yourself. I just didn't do it this time. But yeah, it was a great meal. I've never had a bad meal from there. It was a good time. I really enjoyed it.
Overall, my entire experience from beginning to the end was good. The service was great. The attentiveness of the wait staff was good. Our waitress that we had was on top of things. And, of course, the tables were clean. The restaurant was good. It was a nice atmosphere. The music was low, but there. Just a really good time. Gotta say, overall experience, 10 out of 10. Honestly, when it comes to these local places, you really can't beat the atmosphere that they create. So, definite 10 out of 10 experience. I highly, highly recommend Casa Maria's to anybody who decides to drive through Shoto, Oklahoma for any given reason. Because everybody knows about like the Amish cheese house. Everybody knows about the Dutch pantry. But if I achieve anything in my life, it's to make sure that you, wonderful viewers, understand that this hidden gem in the middle of a tourist town exists and is honestly one of the greatest Mexican restaurants I've ever been to.